Welcome to Controversies of the Day with Logan
and Jay.
Well, Logan, today, now we're going to talk about something rough and tumble, right? We're going to talk about something kind of violent, right?
Yeah, a couple things happened.
Now we're not going to talk about Kevin McCarthy like giving people sharp elbows in the Capitol building, are we?
No.
We're not going to talk about Bernie Sanders having to jump in between a piece of garbage union representative and a U.S. senator from Oklahoma, and we're going to calm down here. We're going to calm down. There's too many problems in the country right now. We're not going to talk about that, are we?
No.
We're not going to talk about these crazy protests and people blocking bridges in New York City and San Francisco over the whole Palestinian-Israel thing, are we?
No.
All right. No, we're not. Today we're going to keep a little bit lighter fare, folks, and I hope this will be a little bit better for everybody. We'll take a little break from the political scene for a second, although in a way it all connects, though. I'm always about synergy, man. I'm always about Carl Jung, synchronicity. And anyway, today we're going to talk about the Iron Claw motion picture coming out by A24. They make a lot of good movies. Coming out December 22nd. And Logan, I got to tell you, buddy, this is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this, and I think I do speak for millions of wrestling fans, especially old school wrestling fans from the 1980s. A long, long time. We've been waiting for this. So it's this is a very cool thing, folks. It's a very sad story, and I'm real curious as to how they're going to pull this off. This was about the Von Erich family, this movie Iron Claw, and they were a big deal in the 1980s. But with all the triumph, and that's actually the name of a DVD that's out there, the Triumph and Tragedy of World Class Championship Wrestling. That was the name of their father's wrestling promotion, and these young guys had gotten pushed by their dad, and they were very successful. And it was just, as their arch rival, Michael Hayes, would say, he's a fabulous freebird, they were over like Rover. That's how he put that. And they were quite the big deal, not just in Texas, but all over the country. And then the personal problems, demons, if you will, tragedy, just one after another, and then it just became sad. If you were a big fan of this family and these young wrestlers, everything just fell apart. And eventually, well, I don't want to give too much away, but it's tragic. It's very tragic. Now you've looked into it a little bit. Because I know you're more. Go ahead.
I saw the trailer and I checked it out. It was intriguing enough because me and fiance we watch wrestling. We watch what wrestling is now. It's not bad. It's entertaining for the most part, but as corny as it is, it's better than most TV. Maybe I guess I'll justify it like that. But anywho, I saw a couple of small YouTube documentaries about the family and their ups and downs. I had definitely a fall from grace for sure. I mean, they were, again, it's a handbook. They don't have a handbook out for fame, so it seems like once you get to that certain level, it's just it all falls apart.
And that's what they say. They say a lot of it may have been too much too soon.
Well, they were all young too.
They're all really young. Yeah. I mean, it was really a tragic thing. On the brighter side of things, there was an interesting thing that was happening in the 1980s in professional wrestling in general. And it was front and center in the Texas territory. And back then, for the wrestling fans today who might not be familiar, because wrestling for most of the younger fans, they've seen basically from the WWE, which originally was the WWF, and it was a regional promotion up in the Northeast. And Vince McMahon Jr., his father, Sr., had a territory up there. And there was territories all over the country. World Class Championship Wrestling, the Von Erichs, that was basically part of Texas. Texas is so huge. One time in Texas, actually, was 4 freaking territories there. And the Von Erichs did expand out a little bit. And Kerry did go to the WWF at the time, which became WWE. He did go there briefly, won the Intercontinental Championship for like their secondary belt, isn't it? They still have it today, don't they? Yeah. And he had a little bit of success there. But backing up a bit, it was a neat changing of the guard as we went into the 80s. It was really a neat time for pro wrestling. If I can go back for a little nostalgic here, I was a kid in this. I was a kid mostly in the 70s, and I'd seen pro wrestling a little bit here and there. but it never caught on with me. I never really. I know some people snagged them when they're little kids and stuff like that. But I saw a lot of the AWA, and to me, there's just a lot of big old fat guys who are bald. You know what I mean? And later I found some of these guys are legends, John. Careful talking about the Crusher, Dick the Bruiser. These guys are big deals to a lot of people, but I don't know. They never really caught on to me. Anyway, one summer I go visit some relatives in North Carolina, and they go, "Oh, we're gonna go see some wrestling." I'm like, "Oh, I'll go see that fake crap." Oh, that's blah blah blah. And I went there, and a lot of this is the Carolinas now. We'll get back to Texas and the Von Erichs in just a second, but and this is 1991, and I went there as a young teenager, and I just got blown away, and I was like, "Oh my God, where has this been all my life?" And it was a lot of younger, up and coming talent, a lot of guys who would go on to become very, very big in the wrestling. Roddy Piper was there. And I'm this pimple faced kid, with flat brown hair, and he's this big guy, with flat brown hair, but he's got the U.S. belt with him, and he was doing this interview, and he's just going crazy, and I'm like, whoa, where's this been all my life? Well, who is this guy? He's just nuts, man, and I just fell in love with wrestling. Ric Flair was there. This is before he became the world champion. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, the Tower of Power, Too Sweet to be Sour. He was there, and oh my gosh! And Rocky Johnson, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson's father, he was there. Big muscles, and he was a muscle bomb. This guy's flying around the ring, man. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was there. Chief Wahoo McDaniel. Longtime wrestling fans will know some of these names. And Austin Idol was there. That's a blast from the past. It kind of looked like Thor, man. He's kind of like Ric Flair too, the bleach blonde hair. And why I bring Austin Idol up is because Billy Corrigan has brought him in to be a manager for some wrestlers or do some things in Billy Corrigan's recent NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, resurrection, so to speak, of what he's been trying to do. We'll get to that later. But back to the Iron Claw. Did you have any questions directly for me when we get into the story? It stars Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White, who my wife has got a crush on from the show The Bear. I don't know. Did you ever see that? Yeah. So, yeah, I know. I think there's some drugs in that show. So drugs are kind of following this storylines all over the place. But this Iron Claw, it looks very good, and I have high hopes for it, my friend. Very high hopes for it.
Well, the high hopes part, do you think there's going to be, how much honesty do you think is going to come from the actual story?
That is a great question, because this, folks, there's so much insanity went on there that I don't even know if in an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, you can even cover it all. So they're probably going to be taking out some things and just to be able to keep the story moving. But honesty is a great question. So tragedy followed this family pretty early on. They lost their first child, some weird freak accident.
Yeah, you got electrocuted.
Yeah, it was like electrocuted, drowned like in a puddle of something. It was just crazy. And the father, his wrestling name was Fritz von Erich. And he actually did a Nazi gimmick for a while. He was a bad guy, and eventually he became a good guy. And then, of course, because otherwise his kids would have been hated. And then the kids, as they came along, they were all pretty much good guys for the most part, especially in Texas. So they lost a child early on. One thing I saw said he died he was like 3 years old. I think he's 6 years old. But
yeah, 6 is what I saw.
Yeah, either way, a horrible situation. And he was, I guess, Jackie Jr. He was named after the father because Fritz's real name was Jack Adkisson. That Adkisson is Von Erich's actual name. And anyway, so there was some tragedy there, and then they had five more boys. I don't know if this was like a family thing. I've seen these families, where they keep having kids wanting to get that girl, So, right. Yeah. But anyway, so then things started happening in the 1980s. I was alluding to earlier was good looking. There was an old guard of the various territories, and these guys were getting their chance to make a big impression, and they did. And cable TV was taken off, and things were going into syndication. And this is probably where Vince Jr. got the idea to go national, because it was just a way to reach everybody, and the technology had changed. But something else really special was happening. And again, you can call me gay, whatever you want. We joke around. but younger, better looking, more athletic guys were suddenly getting that push. They were getting it in the spotlight. They're getting their moment. And what was wild and so cool about World Class Championship Wrestling, all of a sudden, you're starting to get more young ladies coming to the arena and shrieking and going nuts over these guys. These young girls were going nuts for the Von Erichs. And in other regions where they had some, good-looking heartthrob guys, this was starting to catch on. And it's funny because, you and I talk a lot of politics. Pro wrestling actually was always kind of a progressive thing in its own weird way. And it wasn't, I don't think it was for anybody's philosophy. It was more of a business philosophy. And it's really funny. Like, for example, a lot of minority wrestlers in a lot of areas, the promoters usually like them to be the good guys, the baby faces, because they were too nervous, and they let it happen sometimes, but they didn't want to have where you had the minority guy be the bad guy, and all of a sudden you bring in some racial stuff, and then all of a sudden you got a race riot in your hands, and you want to get the heat from the people. You want people to get mad and get loud, but you don't want a riot. And I have actually seen that one time. It wasn't a racial thing though. But I saw a riot take action at a wrestling event one time. Thank God that the police were able to get it under control. For a brief second, I was looking, how am I going to get out of this building? Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But the Von Erichs, they were over like Rover. They were the biggest thing in Texas in the 1980s, and I mean, they actually did have some events a couple times a year in football stadiums. This is not making this up, folks. They play where the Dallas Cowboys did. They do that once a year. They call it the Texas Stadium Show and some of the Cotton Bowls. And that's how huge these guys were. And a lot of it, as I say, because they were younger, good-looking guys. And you still had your old school guys, we want blood, those kind of guys. Those are more the old school fans that were there for the violence. Then you had this whole new wave of these younger women who were just shrieking over them and going just nuts over them. Kevin Von Erich said something about when they used to have to escort him to the ring. He put one hand down here to protect his privates, and he kept his mouth really tight with his lips because they and the security are trying to push the chicks back. But that's how it was. They'd be grabbing at him, and they'd be trying to kiss him, and they're trying to give him the tongue, and then not trying to get too graphic here, but anyway, they were over like Rover. They were. It was just crazy.
Or I had read that doing that at the stadium, they I think during one of their memorial ones, it was like the largest they ever did. It was like 40,000 showed up. They did like $400,000 or $500,000 and just like proceed or profit from that show. So they definitely were a hot item, even towards the beginning of the end, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, that you're talking about a very special day. I forget if it was actually May 4th or May 6th. It's always in my head, and I always wish I was there. I guess it was over 100 degrees. There literally were people fainting. So it was really, I guess, a special thing because for years to get into Texas Stadium where the Dallas Cowboys played in Irvine, Texas, just outside of Dallas, a lot of people couldn't even get in there because the Cowboys were so hot. People had all the tickets were sold out. You know what I mean? So a lot of these wrestling fans they got to be in the stadium for the first time. And it was a special day all around. And this is where Ric Flair lost, my hero. I got the shirt on today in honor of Ric Flair. He lost the world title to Kerry Von Erich, and the place went nuts. And they built up this feud for a good 2 years. Ric Flair wrestled all the Von Erichs, David, Kevin, Kerry. Feuded with all of them, and always would just by the skin of his teeth would walk out with the belt. They would do those finishes where the referee would get knocked down, okay, and then Kevin, for example, would do a flying crossbody off the top. He would pin Rick, but then somebody said something like, "Oh, but that referee got knocked down, so no, this pin can't count. It's a disqualification," and the place would just, go nuts, and people would be so mad. And so they would do all these finishes, like just to tease it and just almost to taunt the crowd. And they did this for like almost 2 years. But finally, right in the middle of the ring, no controversy at all, with a backslide, Kerry Von Erich pinned Ric Flair, and history was made. People went nuts. It was a great moment. It was a great moment for professional wrestling. Yeah, it really was. And that was just a great card, folks. And again, that had nothing to do with Vince McMahon Jr. I just mentioned that. I loathe that guy. We can get into that. We can get into that later. But yeah, they were really great. Now, what's really sad, and like you said, the beginning of the end, and a lot of people have called it that, even though it was such a great moment. Well, a few months right before that, the the third brother, the real tall one, David Von Erich, he had died under very strange circumstances in Japan. And there was lots the family said publicly, and then there was rumors from other wrestlers. And to this day, it's one of those things. Did he die of an overdose? He supposedly had some. They call it some ruptured. I don't know, something. Yeah. It's like. Yeah, a lot of people are real kind of. To this day, it's wrapped in mystery, and we'll see if how the movie handles that. That's one controversy right away, and we'll see how the movie handles that. And a lot of people thought it was in poor taste. Now, they always did, like I said, they would do a stadium show like at least once or twice a year. This one they wanted to call the David Memorial, and some people thought, well, that's nice, and other people thought, well, in the business, they're like, yeah, you're using your deceased son's thing to help promote your show, I don't know, because a lot of people feel it was like a curse what went through this family. And if you see the movie, and again, if you're not familiar with the story, or if you are a wrestling fan who is familiar with the story, you're going to go, you got to go, I don't know, maybe it was a curse. Other crazy thing is there was a lot of other tragic things that happened to other people that worked at World Class Championship Wrestling. And of course, if we could expand the microscope, not zoom in the microscope, but take it out further, and so many people in pro wrestling. It's been a very sad story. Hopefully things have gotten better in the world of pro wrestling, but I don't know. Bray Wyatt just passed away, was it a year or two ago?
No, that was much more recent than that, months ago.
And he was only in his 30s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. If it was a personal thing or is it wrestling related? I don't know if they released anything about it. I didn't really look into it.
Sad.
But yeah, sad nonetheless.
I mean, it's a crazy lifestyle, folks. So just a full disclosure, if I can do this. So I was involved in the world of professional wrestling on a small time level. I never wrestled in Von Erichs, never was in Ring of Hogan or Stone Cold or The Rock. Okay. I have worked with people who were coming on the way. We're up the top. Work with those guys, and I met them on their way down. And I did wrestle a couple of those people, or was in the same dressing room with a couple of those people. And you hear a lot of interesting stories and stuff like that. So I have a little connection. I don't want to overdo that. I had a lot of fun in that business, and I still have this, passion for the 80s, looking back at the 80s. And that was an era that they were so great at. And their family's promotion was so great, too. So much talent came through the promotion, World Class Championship Wrestling, including later, like you were talking about the Ultimate Warrior. He was called the Dingo Warrior first, back to our Bluey references Australia. Some kind of a dingo, I don't know, wild animal out there. Anyway, they called him the Dingo Warrior originally before he went to the WWF at the time and became the sensation that he did. And he also died, I think in his 50s, early 50s. So a lot of tragedy in pro wrestling in general, but this family, and it's going to be interesting, as you say, how much are they going to reveal? Because they grew up in a business that was, I hate to say this, but I don't like to say, but we're lying to the public to an extent. You're putting on a performance, and we're selling this as if this is real in real time. People bought into it, and then real life tragedies happen. As I say, David died in early '84. Kerry would go on to become the world champion a few months later. Things seem to be getting better. And then...
Didn't he only hold that for like 3 weeks before he had an arrest? Or he was about to go to jail or something of the sort?
Okay, so what you just did there, you're mixing a few stories. Yes, he only had it for like 3 weeks. And Ric Flair took it back from him in Japan. And there's a lot of controversy about that too, because a lot of people kind of thought, when Kerry won it from Ric Flair, like it was a passing of the baton, like this young guy is going to get a run with this thing. And he really only wrestled mostly in Texas. He did a few dates in Florida, and then he went on to Japan and lost the belt back to Ric Flair. The story I heard was that he had missed a couple dates in there, and that just said to the older guard of the then National Wrestling Alliance, which was kind of like a mafia back then, and I mean that in a good way, by the way. And they had these regional promoters, and then once a year they'd get together in Las Vegas, and they'd have their own little convention. And some of that was kind of open to the wrestlers or even open to the public. And then there was like always a private closed door meeting thing. And then they discussed business and kind of handle things in between the regional promotions. Vince McMahon came in and decided to take everything over. And it took him a few years to, well, it's more than a few years to really knock everybody out of business. But ultimately he did it. Ultimately he won. So Vince, you won. You happy now? Why don't you retire? Have a life, pal. What is your problem? Anyway, so getting back to it, yeah, it was kind of weird. All of a sudden, Kerry had it, and he didn't have it. And Ric Flair's got it again, and then I kept wondering how the Von Erichs going to get it again, and they never did. And so they eventually even broke off and made their own championship, their own world title. Then you got too many world titles at one point. It was so crazy in the wrestling world in the second half of the 80s. But I think what you're thinking of was towards the end of Kerry's life, because he had been the Intercontinental Champion in the WWF, now WWE, and then he had gotten he got into trouble more than once with I think it was forging prescriptions. He not only was into recreational drugs, unfortunately, he had a problem with a lot of painkillers, and a lot of that had to do with a very tragic accident that happened in 1986. And I don't know if you want to bring that up or what I should just, leave that open. The wrestling fans that know what happened to him in 1986
Oh,
know.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know. When's this movie coming out?
This movie's coming out December 22nd of 2023 here.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter.
Everybody knows. Anyway, so he's on a motorcycle. It's sort of in the trailer, and it's Jeremy Allen White who portrays him. He's on his motorcycle. He's going faster and faster, and you look at his face like he's thinking of maybe suicidal thoughts. I don't know how the movie's going to portray this. Anyway, he ends up getting a very bad motorcycle accident in 1986, loses part of his foot. The crazy story that Kevin would reveal, and there's been a few different family documentaries made about it. They're fascinating too, is that they were actually able to put his foot back on, but that he got up while he was in the hospital. He was not supposed to get up. And he got up, actually walked on it, and it's disgusting here, but you can figure out what happened, and they actually didn't have to remove part of his foot. Now, I've actually wrestled, or I knew some guys, the wrestling shows that I was on in the late 80s, again, they got these crazy stories. There's a crazy story. Kerry was working for the AWA at the time, a bigger promotion, right before he went to the WWE. And they're in Las Vegas doing a TV taping. And I think he's wrestling a guy named Colonel De Beers. And I actually got to meet the guy. He's a cool guy. Ed Wiskowski. I think he just passed away about 5 years ago. Anyway, they kept this secret. Okay, only the people in Texas really knew this. And I guess Kerry in the locker room, I don't know if the promoters gave him his own locker room or what happened, but he kept it very secret. And anyway, this wrestler, Colonel De Beers, Kerry was down on the mat or something, and he grabs his foot and he pulls it. And I guess he pulled the prosthetic and the boot off. And so these people in Las Vegas briefly saw this, that Kerry had half of a foot, and I don't know what Colonel De Beers thought for a second. And Kerry grabbed the boot, roll out of the ring, rolls underneath the ring, puts the prosthetic and the boot back on, and they finish the match somehow. Again, I wasn't there, folks, but there is legend out there on YouTube, on the internet, to back this up. It's kind of crazy, and it's not only Colonel De Beers, but it was this other wrestler. I was also in the locker room one time, Pat Tanaka, and there's him being interviewed on YouTube talking about this crazy incident that happened. And so Kerry had that happen. They made this special boot for him, and he actually it took him like a whole year, but he returned, and he wasn't his old self, but still pretty damn good, But they kept it a secret because they thought it would make him look weak, I mean, in a way, it could turn around and make you look stronger. That that you could do this, with a prosthetic on your foot. But they back then, and his father was very old school. They thought he looked weak.
So what year would you say this was?
Well, he lost his foot in the accident in '86, and then he took him like almost a good year to come back. He came back sometime, I want to say in '87, and then the incident that I just told you about, I think happened in like 1989. I want to say.
So
Okay.
now,
Sure.
at this point now, let's say even like 87, 88 is when he was making the comeback, right?
Right.
What else happened to the family since then?
Well, this gets really crazy. So the oldest three sons, okay, who were part of the promotion's just huge expansion. Again, they were syndicated all over, so they had fans all over, even in Israel, of all places, man. And they were huge in Japan, and they would take tours of Japan. They did a couple tours of Israel, and they took the whole promotion over there and did really good. But anyway, so David passes away in 1984. And right before he passed away, they had another younger brother named Mike, who had no business being in the ring. This guy was way too small, okay? But they kept pushing him, and he just couldn't fill his older brother's shoes.
Is this okay? So this is after
this is Mike now.
All right, so this is the first brother. After he passed away, the second brother. So what I had seen is that when his father tried to like push him into the ring, he was a lot skinnier. He was smaller. He didn't even want to do that. He was more wanting to do like camera work behind, doing promotion and stuff. He didn't want to do anything.
That's what they should have left him alone. Yeah, they pushed him out in that role, and it's really sad. He really had no business being out there, and it was kind of weird. Like I said, something was happening with the old man too, because in the old days, I mean, he had actually sent the other three sons, David, Kevin, and Kerry, out to other promotions a little bit. And even though you were a promoter's son in the old days, and you still had to pay your dues, and they still sent you other places. They never sent this Mike anywhere. You know what I mean? He wasn't very good, and he was too small. He was just way too small.
At the time, he was just a camera.
Yeah. I mean, and they should just let him alone. But yeah, very sad. And then Mike ends up taking his own life in I think it was 1987.
Yeah. So his whole story. So he ended up. What happened to him? He got.
Well, he had some severe shoulder injury. He had some surgery, and then he had this really high fever. They thought they were going to actually lose him, and then he made it. I mean, there's a whole prayer scene that he had like 105 fever, some crazy high fever. They thought they were going to lose this guy. Toxic shock syndrome because he got infected with his shoulder or something. Anyway, he ended up hanging on, and thank God he did. And then they even wheeled him out and went at one of these big shows in a wheelchair, and he waved to the crowd. And everything was just like, that's when it started to get weird.
It was overexposure, that guy. And then he actually came back to wrestle after all.
Yeah.
For a short time.
And he was never, and I say he was never quite right. Yeah. That maybe the high fever maybe had done some brain damage.
Well, that's what they're kind of. I mean, I saw an interview where they had first brought him out. It was like his first appearance. He was, I almost looked like he was still in like a hospital gown, in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
His brother, the doctor, another brother, and he had like half one eye was like half blood. He just
like, why bring this guy out? It sounds like he still needs to be recuperating somewhere.
Like again, the family name. Look, we're still alive.
Yeah. That's where things started to get weird. That's why I say, this promotion was great from '82 to '86, and after '86, everything just started to fall apart.
I mean, I see where the father was coming from. He's trying to hold together what he had, but kind of selfishly. I mean.
And he too got into the drugs. You know what I mean? And he did have a real injury. Again, Kerry out with losing his foot. He had some real injuries as well. But they were into recreational drugs as well as the painkillers.
So some of the early on stuff, they had the father. Was he had 5 boys. He had them kind of pitted against each other. Always competitive to each other.
Yeah,
I always wanted to have one to have that top.
He actually had rankings. He actually told him who's his favorite.
Which
Kerry was his favorite, is what they said. And then Kevin, and then David, and then Mike, and then Chris, or whatever. He said, he was like, well, he said, card subject to change. It's subject to change.
Okay. So definitely, I mean, I can see where, like, the one who lost his foot, where he could, I'm not going to let anybody know this because it's such a high standard. I mean, It's a tragic story. It really is. It's sad. It's kind of even weirder that I'm excited to see the movie because I like the story. I guess though it's real. Again, that's what adds the sadness to it. But
Yeah, I mean, this is
tragic
this is
for sure.
it's so tragic and it's so sad. And the father, and I really, when he went,
He was living this life. What do they say? Precariously
yeah, through
through
his kids,
Like,
right?
I
And
mean,
they
hardcore.
reached stardom that
Oh
he
yeah.
didn't even have.
I mean, you're gonna get the title because
He
was
never
always out of his
he
grasp.
never was a world champion.
Yeah. So
So
it's crazy. It's really crazy to see that much influence that someone can do to their kids, their family, and seem not to have a regret about it. I mean, the whole story is just.
And somewhere denial had to get in there too. I guess with the success of the business, maybe that's how this Jack Atkinson, the Fritz von Erich, the wrestling name, how he got into denial. Because you think he would have just said, "No, I love my kids. Let's get them to Betty Ford or something. Let's get them in rehab, and we'll just bring in some other wrestlers in to fill the void."
He kind of did, but he only did that when his kids started dying off. He brought in two other people for sure. One was a fake family member.
Oh, and they handled this whole thing so wrong. So in wrestling, you have these fake family members, and people are supposed to be brothers or cousins. And then, ironically enough, in the wrestling business, there's also a whole lot of real life. What do you want to call it? What's the big word for it? Anyway, you know what I'm saying? A lot of kin, a lot of relatives. The Rock. How many people are cousins to the Rock in some way, shape, or form? As an example, in our modern day, was he cousins to Roman Reigns somehow? One of those guys. I mean, so many of these guys are related, and so there's the real relation, then there's the fake relation. Well, Fritz, earlier in his career, had a tag team partner who was named Waldo von Erich, who really wasn't his brother. So anyway, they found some young, good-looking guy. They call him Lance von Erich, and and so they brought him in, trying to tell people that he was a von Erich and he was Waldo's kid. But then some people figured out who he really was.
He was a local guy. And
yeah,
people found out. Yeah,
you're impressing me. You did some homework. Yeah, And then when they got rid of the guy, they came on TV and they admitted it all. And I'm thinking, whoa, what are you doing? Don't do that. Because the guy wanted more money and stuff. I'm thinking, shoot a wrestling angle. This is what wrestling's all about, baby. Money on the table. To have Lance turn him into a bad guy and feud with Lance. Have Lance betray one of them. Like, oh my God, the jealous cousin. Oh, it's come on, it was money on the table, you guys. Oh, but as I say, that was like '87 that happened. So the promotion was after '86. It was just Kerry lost his foot. Some other people died as well who were connected to the promotion. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll say the youngest one.
And then Chris.
Yeah, he's probably the most tragic out of all.
Oh my God! So
really
so Chris was the baby of the family, a little guy who did not have the natural gifts that his older brothers had. He really wanted
to be. Height. I mean, he was bulky.
Yeah,
but he just didn't have the height.
Yeah, he trained hard, but he had asthma, I guess, and he took some medication for that, and that it made his bones extra weaker.
I think it was an actual syndrome. I think he had.
Did he? Okay.
From what I've heard.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that's.
But in either case, he
wanted it.
Yeah,
he wanted to be like that. Like I said, Mike was kind of pushed into it, and then like you said, the baby, he really wanted to be. He even had his hair all kind of curled like Kerry, and he wanted to look like his older brother Kerry, and yeah, he just couldn't get it done, and then he kills himself.
And they all done this before any of them were 30. They were all in their 20. I think 26 was the oldest, and 22 was the youngest out of the three. At least the three.
Yeah, I never really lined it all up, but yeah, no. Mike was very young, and
Mike was 22. I think.
Yeah, he was really young, and then Chris had to be really young too, really early 20s.
24.
Yeah, you haven't grown yet, guy. It's just.
And the thing again, well. So the father's not alive anymore, right? He had brain cancer.
He died in the late '90s. I want to say. I think in the '90s. Yeah, and then the parents ultimately divorced. I mean, Doris, the mom, she went through so much. I think they divorced somewhere in the '90s, and then Fritz, Jack Atkinson, whatever you want to call him, I want to say late '90s, maybe 2000. I'm not sure, but he finally passed away, and. There's a crazy story. Again, I don't know if it's in the film, where I guess the brain cancer was taken over, and there's a meeting. This is way after the promotion collapsed. They lost all that, and the brothers were gone. Where the father pulled a gun on Kevin, on Zac Efron, and said, and he didn't know if his dad was going to shoot him or not. There's some bizarre, crazy scene. So I don't know if we're going to see that in the film. Again, there's so many layers of just insanity here and just tragedy. It's a horrible story. But I'm glad it's going to be told because it was real.
Well, it comes down to how, again, like the first question is how true to the actual story is going to be. Now we had talked about how much McMahon might. You were telling me he was going around collecting other promoters' backlogs, videos, and whatnot to own them. So it's how much of this does he have? I know, like you said, the one brother is still alive.
Kevin's still alive.
He was.
And that's who Zac Efron's played.
Really, and I really thought with that square chin he had going, I thought he was playing the pretty boy one that won the championship, like the role.
I know, I know, and Kerry was the biggest of them all. Yeah. He definitely did roids, but he definitely worked out a lot. And by the way, those first three were all athletes. They were real athletes. Yeah. I mean, they played high school and even college sports. And Kerry was actually an alternate on the Olympics for 1980 for discus throwing.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he incorporated this discus punch where he would spin around before he punched somebody, and it was one of his little shticks in the wrestling business. But he was a legitimate discus thrower through high school and in college, and was an alternate for the Olympics in 1980. Which was boycotted by then President Jimmy Carter. Always back to politics. And but anyway, they were all very athletic.
So you have, again, what we're saying, we don't know how much the WWE might actually have of this content. So who owns the rights to the movie? So if it's still, if Kerry, the one's still alive, right?
No, Kevin.
If Kevin's still alive and still owns, is he giving out the rights to this? Or is it not? So I would say if he gives out the rights to this, if he controls this for the most part, I think he would help dictate the real story being told. Maybe his last thing to his family to give out the truth because there's so much speculation in his face. Or if WWE owns it, I really think they're going to take the turn to blame it all, and the dad's going to be the bad guy. I think there's going to be all this other drugs and all this. Again, they're kind of keeping it contained to just that family type thing, that promotion. So if WWE has their hands on it, I don't think it's gonna tarnish. In no way, shape, or form are they gonna try to push or let it be seen that it's tarnished. This movie's tarnishing what wrestling is now. So I don't know. I think I don't know. I hope it's true to what I've been reading and seeing in other documentaries.
I'm really excited about it.
I mean, yes.
And I got to tell you, this is an obsession of mine. I don't know if I should expose all these things here on our show. This is an obsession of mine. I'm still working on a script myself. It's not about the Von Erichs, but pro wrestling in general. Pro wrestling to me for many years it's never been handled by you guys in Hollywood very well, in my opinion anyway.
Well, what about the one with Mickey Rourke?
Except for that one. Thank you for bringing it up. Thank you, my friend. I forget what the director's name. You know, he's in a lot of movies. Darren Aronofsky is his name. It's something like that. Darren, please forgive. The wrestler was very good, Mickey Rourke. And I actually, like I say, I was on what they called today the indie level. In the old days, they were outlaw promotions. So I was on the rinky-dink level, and some of those scenes in that movie. I mean, I saw that. Some of these guys who were big stars. I mean. I was in the same dressing room a couple times with, actually wrestled one time, the Birdman, Coco Beware. You can look him up. He was at WrestleMania 3 for Vince McMahon in Pontiac, Michigan in 1987. He's in this little guy. He's in this how he's mad he only got $10,000 at National Guard Army or VFW Hall thing. Hogan and Andre got each got over $100,000. And he should have got more. The other guys got more. And of course, we're all just little rinky-dink guys with big, like. None of us are ever going to make $10,000. Okay, so, but yeah, that was a good story. It was very sad. Did you like that movie?
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no problem with it. Again, it was something I was learning about the whole industry thing. Again, another reason I want to see this, just because it's. So today, now that I'm watching it, I don't know if you watch it nearly, or if you follow any of the WWE stuff or wrestling as it is now in that form, but entertaining, yeah, sure. I mean, it still has the same crap. It's, I guess I was watching it back in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Is that when you first got into it?
Yeah, like Stone Cold when he first appeared, and The Rock. I watched it here and there. Younger, I remember like seeing Bam Bigelow and those guys on. I remember Hulk and his yellow shirt for the NWO stuff. I remember a lot of it. I don't think myself as a fan then. Maybe a little bit more so now. When I was younger, so when I was 16, I went to a show. What do they call it? A house show, I guess. On a Saturday at a college basketball stadium, YSU, Youngstown State University. It was cool. Triple H and the Generation Degeneration X was the big thing. Then I remember getting some kind of X hand thing. Maybe it was a t-shirt.
Merch. It's all about the merch.
It was a t-shirt, I think, for Generation X, and it was some Stone Cold.
Oh, you have a big finger, finger thing?
Something I can't recall. But I want to say like The Rock was there. We saw King.
Wow. That was definitely, wrestling's kind of going through these ebbs and flows where it gets popular, then it kind of goes down a little bit, and then it pops again. That was another hot time.
Dude, yeah, it was. Everything was big and explosive. It was like real grit. And now it's like this. It's more so. In my head, wrestling for what it is it's a soap opera. It's a man's soap opera. I think when women got involved and now these hunks come out again with the three brothers especially, and they even again the documentaries I've seen, they'd admit this where these guys are bringing in tickets, so now and they weren't the only ones, but now it's the big thing, and all these guys are getting more good looking again. It's you got to sell a ticket, right? In any case, even then, it was getting kind of to that height where now it's even going beyond pretty boy shit. I mean, I don't know. Again, it's entertaining. I don't think it's anything what it was even when I first started watching it during those days. It just seemed grittier. It was more substance behind it. Looking back on it now, if I look at some of those old, like the little promotional videos during the show, it looks so corny and fake. But it's great. I remember seeing that stuff live. Vince McMahon's in the middle of the ring talking shit, and then all of a sudden you hear that glass break, and here comes Stone Cold, and the place would go nuts. It was so great, it was awesome. Yeah. So I went to that one when I was younger, and then a couple years ago, right before last Christmas, I think,
you and your best gal,
we went and saw Raw there, and actually she was on TV like within the first couple minutes of going on live. She was the first person that showed the crowd, so she was super stoked. We were right across from where the camera guy was, and if you can see us,
a lucky guy. His girl is a big wrestling fan. Okay, so you wrestling fans, okay, yeah, you're lucky there.
But even then,
maybe she's more of a fan than you are.
Being there was again fun. The whole atmosphere, the energy. It was
I mean, when it's done right, to me, it's art. Okay, when it's done right, and when the crowd gets into it, and the crowd is a part of it, and it's almost like a concert in a way. It's a pseudo athletic event, but the crowd's into it, and when they're into it, and everybody's, it's magic. It really is. And when it's done poorly, it's like a bad Three Stooges impersonation. I've heard people mention that. So you're right. Sometimes you see a band, they're like, hey, let's go on to the next match.
It's fun though.
I gotta go to the bathroom. Get some concessions.
Watch the mistakes, and the gaffes, and the missteps and whatnot.
Yeah, things do happen, Things do happen. So.
I don't mind it.
But yeah, I mean, there's been magical times, and yeah, definitely like you were talking about the late '90s. That was a magical time too, because WCW, not world class, but World Championship Wrestling still existed, and so they're actually giving the WWF still at the time before they became WWE. They were giving us some competition, and competition is good. Vince McMahon Jr. Oh my God, this guy.
Oh, they still got competition. They got that AWE,
AEW, and like I said, the NWA is doing some stuff. So there is some competition, and I wish all you guys the best. Again, I always have a certain degree of passion for it. I don't follow it as closely. I get a little bit through you and through my nephew what's going on nowadays. But yeah, when it's done right, it's magic. It really is. It's really something. So, and I always have that thing in me like, oh, I would have just tried harder. I would have shot up on roids. I would have had sex with Pat Patterson. Anyway, sorry.
Pat Patterson? Who's Pat Patterson?
Who's Pat Patterson? Well, he's dead now. Yeah, he was one of Vince McMahon Jr.'s right-hand men, so to speak, and there was some sexual harassment accusations against him, but he always was able to get out of any serious legal trouble.
Against
I think.
Vince or against this Pat?
Well, I think Pat and some other people in the management. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, touchy-feely?
Yeah. There's a lot of nasty rumors out there about some of the guys who did get pushed in the '90s. Maybe they had to spend some time with Pat, but hopefully none of that's true. He was supposed to be a brilliant mind in the business.
I want to see that documentary.
Yeah, I don't think WWE will have anything to do with that documentary. That could be coming. You never know.
I'm surprised they haven't made a China documentary or a China movie.
And that's really, again, another very sad, tragic story. Oh my God, the love triangle there. I mean, yeah, she was with Triple H, and they seemed very much in love. And then Stephanie, this is a movie right here. And Stephanie McMahon, the daughter of Vince McMahon, also a very pretty gal. She falls for Hunter, and then Hunter goes with her, and then Chyna's all heartbroken, and I guess it was just too hard for everybody to work in that kind of environment around each other, and there's been other situations like that where, it's pretty hard for everybody to all work under the same roof
for sure.
With real life emotions, not scripted wrestling angles, but real life angles behind the scenes going on. So, very sad. And then, she ends up dying too, and again, folks, you want to say to anybody out there, in the back to the Von Erich story, again, doesn't matter who you are. Addiction can get anybody. You could be so popular and have so many people love you and be in all these magazines and, get title belts and everything. And, once that addiction takes hold. So to everyone out there, please, if you have chemical dependency, if you have addiction of some sort, reach out, get some help. AA, there's all kinds of different organizations out there. Don't be too proud. Get some help. And the real tragic one is the suicide one. And I don't know, did I already say it? I'm going to repeat myself, but yes, I even on my small time level, that I never made it to big time, folks. I know of two guys. One I actually trained, helped train them. I managed them. I helped him in his early. Anyway, he ended up taking his own life. Another guy, real nice guy, I actually wrestled against him. He ended up taking his own life, and then we had this one. Everybody got together. This one guy's establishment, and it was like bittersweet. We're all there for a very sad reason, but it was so nice to see a bunch of guys I hadn't seen in years. And the point is, I know there's a lot of people hurting out there. There are. And I just want to say we care. I don't know what we can do. We're just mere mortals living our own lives, dealing with our own problems. But get help. Get help. If you're anybody out there who's thinking of taking the I don't want to say the easy way out, but taking their way out, don't reach out. Go to an emergency room. Reach out to a suicide hotline. Something. Reach out. This life for all of us, Logan, is too short. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's bad. You're hurting. It can get better. It can get better. So hang in there. Just want to get that out. So anyway, it makes me sad in my own situation. Two guys that I knew, I had fallen out of touch with them. Nobody probably knew how to get a hold of each other. If I had known they were struggling, I would have reached out to them. So the Iron Claw coming out by the production company A24, and the release date is December 22nd. I'm gonna go see it. I hope they do a good job with it. Hollywood again. You other than the wrestler, as Logan pointed out, the 2006 release. Darren Aronofsky directed that one. This is Sean. I was gonna say Sean Durkin. Sean Durkin wrote and directed this one. Iron Claw. Yeah. He's done a few other things. Unfortunately, it's not coming about. But he's been involved in TV and in films before. This is a rather small budget film, though. I mean, it was under $20 million they made it, which in the old days that was a lot of money, but nowadays what they I mean,
Marvel spends hundreds of
millions. Yeah. Just think what they got to do to break even. I mean, it's crazy, But so hopefully this will do good. I really think Hollywood's missed the boat, but who knows? This could change things. There are several characters actually in the promotion World Class Championship Wrestling. They're their own movie, not even Von Erich directly related. I mean,
well, don't give no ideas. We don't need Disney or we don't need a wrestling Universal Cinematic Universe.
I'm working on something myself, but I'm sure a bunch of dreamers are all working on something. But I would love to see more. I mean, when you think of like genres of movies, I mean, it could even be sports movies. Look at a million boxing movies. We've had a lot of baseball movies, a lot of freaking football movies, not so many basketball movies, some. But I mean, I don't think pro wrestling is something that Hollywood has really gone into enough, in my personal opinion.
Well, I think again, McMahon owning everything, he kind of is his own production company. I mean, they make their own documentaries and whatnot, so it'd be hard for me to see them making any. Again, that's why in my head, I don't think WWE owns the rights to this. I haven't looked. I want to Google.
Yeah, I know. You got me curious.
But if I were to speculate that WWE had this, it wouldn't be going through A24. It'd be going through them. They'd make it themselves, and then maybe I don't know what the difference is having another company throw it out there so it can hit theaters. I mean, I've never seen a WWE production in a movie theater. I don't know. Maybe that's why they're going through. Maybe they're going through A24.
I don't know.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it's a great question. Like I said, Kevin sold some rights and some of the TV footage to WWE, and right away WWE then would show it's showing it to this day on their classics.
Yeah, like I was saying, like so any of the documentaries that I even seen looking into this before today was all any footage that had the WWE tag or at least saying that the tattoo came from the copyright, I guess we'll call it. But yeah, so it'd be hard for me to believe that. I don't think we'd see a lot more of these. If WWE didn't put this out themselves, I don't think you're going to see much more, because now it comes down to what rights to what stories can anybody else tell that they don't own. If they did put their hands on this and this is their production of some sort, then yeah, I think they might see this cash cow and start pushing out. Sure. I mean, The Rock did good with this TV show. He had a TV show for a while,
right?
So, again, I would imagine WWE had to let him do that. Yeah. Because again, just out of his likeliness and his father's likeliness, I'm sure they own a lot of that. So it again had to be getting paid somehow for it. So maybe they do own it, and we'll see more.
And that was one of the coolest things too. The Rock in recent years, I don't know where we're at right now in Hollywood, whatever, but he was the biggest movie star recently. And like, oh my God, in the old days, Arnold was a big guy, but otherwise you thought, no muscle bound big guy is gonna be the biggest star. They're pushing these little midgets like Tom Cruise and people like that, but yeah, things change and you never know. And obviously with CGI, it made all of a sudden we could do Marvel stuff and really look really cool, right?
Sure. At the beginning, it was real nice. Now it just seems too hard. It seems
really.
I think the next generation of whatever digital computing for that type of stuff. I think that's going to hopefully be better in the future, because what we got going on now is just it's like a video game. The same as like Call of Duty keeps on coming out a new one every year, and it's the same crap. They just put a better skin on to make it look more realistic. That's all it is, more realistic.
Before we go, Log, I want to just touch on a couple of things. So World Class Championship Wrestling, the father's promotion, it really was just freaking cool, man. I mean, and this stuff is available again to pump you, Vince, because you own the rights now on I don't know if it's Peacock or something. You can watch a lot of the old stuff, and it is so great. And they did a lot. They started the vignettes, the little video things that were away from the ring and stuff, and they did them really well. I mean, some of them are really funny, and oh my God, there's some really fun, crazy stuff. And there was a lot of interesting things there too. And I just want to say, like, they were way ahead of everybody. So Vince thought, when he was trying to take over, for example, he got a hold of Cyndi Lauper. I don't even know if your generation know who she was. She had that Girls Just Want to Have Fun big hit. Okay. So he got a hold of her, and then there was Rock and Wrestling Connection. Well, the regional promotions had done music videos and had people coming out to music way before this. Okay, just to give you an example how he would take other people's ideas and different things. So the year is 1982. Let me just set this up a little more. It's the end of '82. Kerry Von Erich is going to wrestle Ric Flair for the world title in a steel cage. They got Michael Hayes, a Freebird, who was a good guy at the time. He's going to be a special referee in this match. Ooh. And so Kerry's going to go for the world title, right? And this is '82 now. This is like a year and a half before Kerry actually win it. And Kerry's going to go out to the ring, and he comes out to Rush's Modern Day Warrior, which we hear at our workplace over the things. Every time I think of him, he comes out to Rush's Modern Day Warrior, and a lot of guys back then that were the good guys, babyface, they'd run out and they hit the he swaggers out there. Okay, I don't know if this is my gayness coming out right now, but no, this was just so freaking cool. He just swaggered. All this is on YouTube, the real footage. I don't know about what's going to be in the movie. He just swaggers out there, and I don't know. This happened a lot, not just this night. I know there's a pretty woman, like real close to the ring. She could have been a plant. I don't know. And then he grabs her, French kisses her right there. And then he just, gets in the ring. And him and Ric Flair have a great match. But during the match, Michael Hayes gets into it with Ric Flair, who's the bad guy, right? And he's the champion. Well, he gets into it. And they keep pushing each other around. And finally, Michael Hayes punches Ric Flair and almost like knocks him out. Flair goes down. And then Michael Hayes is telling Kerry Von Erich, get on top of him, pin him. And Kerry Von Erich, I'm not, he's a good guy. He's like, I'm not going to win like that. I'm not going to win like that. Michael Hayes is finally like, what the hell with you guys? And he goes to leave. And there's another hit or another Freebird, Terry Gordy, outside the ring to protect everybody from trying to get out of the ring. And they do this in perfect time. You can watch this on YouTube, folks. So Kerry Von Erich goes to say something to Michael Hayes as Michael Hayes is trying to leave the cage, and just perfect timing here. And then they're arguing. Flair comes from behind and hits Kerry Von Erich with a knee, and then Kerry Von Erich then shoves Michael Hayes through the cage door. He goes flying out. Kerry Von Erich is sitting there with his head wide, which is a perfect shot through the ropes. And then Terry Gordy, who is Michael Hayes' partner, who's outside the ring, he sees that. He takes the door and just he'd see Ric Flair did it and slams the door on Kerry's head. Kerry juices right there. He's out, and then the feud between the Freebirds and the Von Erichs was on, and they had the three sons still at the time. They had more sons to come in the business, but there was three guys in the Freebirds, and they had just this incredible feud, made huge money. And just to give you an idea, I was telling you about, they did some stadium shows here and there. But let's just talk a little more consistent. Dallas was so hot that there was this old building called the Sportatorium. It wasn't super huge. It wasn't like a super huge arena would hold 20,000. It held maybe 5,000-6,000. But they did shows there every week. Okay? Think about this. This is every week in Dallas. That's how hot wrestling freaking was in the 80s. It wasn't that way in every city. Memphis it was, Houston it was, Dallas it was. But like back then, the WWF or the AWA, the biggest cities, right? Chicago, New York, they were only doing their shows like once a month in their big arenas, okay? In certain areas of the country, it was that red hot once a week, and they were drawing at least 5,000 people to the sport and selling it out sometimes. So that's how red hot it was, just to give you some numbers right there. And then they would go to shows at the Reunion Arena where the basketball and players played and the concerts were and stuff. And anyway,
I'd say Vince definitely got his definitely again multiplied all that. I mean, they got 3 live shows a week. They do Raw, SmackDown, plus their second brand NXT.
Yeah.
And they do all the house shows in between. So I mean, they're everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and in the '80s, I read that the WWF, Vince's baby, so to speak. They would sometimes doing 2 or 3 shows a night, different parts of the country. They were flying everywhere. Those guys were getting so burnt out back then. Again,
even they just had one in Saudi Arabia or whatever.
Yeah.
And then again, that was on Saturday. They did. Now, granted, I think they did one of the shows. I think their Friday night show was theirs. They didn't have to overnight it. But then Saturday to Sunday, Monday, they're already back. Back stateside in DC or something doing another. I'm not sure.
They've done Wembley Stadium in England years ago, and in Japan it's still a really
Australia
big deal.
for WrestleMania next
Yeah.
year.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
I might be lying
Wow.
about that, I think.
And in Mexico, Lucha Libre has been big for years. I mean, so it is a global phenomenon. It really is.
Just
It really is. Well, anyway, thank you folks for joining us today. And if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a Von Erich fan, if you're a 1980s wrestling fan, or a today wrestling fan, I think you should be interested in this movie. I am very interested in the movie. I have high hopes. Sean Durkin, I am wishing all the best for you, sir, and everybody involved, Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White. Hopefully it's a really good show. So looking forward to that in December. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.